Welcome back to the next section of Traefik Training. In this section, we're going to talk about the Traefik dashboard. We're going to understand how to open the dashboard. We're going to review the user interface. So we're going to navigate through the user interface, understand where we can find services and different configurations of the Traefik, and also just understand what the dashboard provides us. Next, we'll investigate the Who Am I service that we have running, and we'll look at it in the dashboard from a visual perspective. Let's get started. From our command line, if we remember, we still have our Who Am I and Traefik services running. So as you see here, we have Traefik running with one Who Am I instance. Now, let's head over to our documentation. And in our documentation in step 4, we can see get to know your Traefik dashboard. And basically to open the dashboard, all you need to do is open a new tab, and we're going to open 0.0.0.0 port 8080. And if you remember back in the configuration in Docker Compose, we had two ports open, port 80 for actually hosting the container traffic, and 8080 is for the dashboard itself. So let's start port 8080, and there you go. You can see it redirects to dashboard, and now we are inside the Traefik dashboard. Now there's also within the dashboard, you see the version, we see the different availability as far as like different services that are being configured or managed by Traefik. We have HTTP, TCP, UDP, and we also have the option to go dark theme. Now I'm going to leave it on light theme, even though I like the dark theme, just because it's easier to present with. It's easier to see in the video. Now, we see down here exactly what's happening with HTTP. Now, if we scroll down, we can see TCP. We don't have any TCP services running at the moment, but in further sections, we'll enable TCP. Same goes for UDP, and then features down below. So we have tracing, metrics, access log, and what providers are available. So if we have multiple providers, we'd see them all here. As well as the features, we'll start enabling these in further sections. And this gets really exciting when we start turning on more features. But for right now, let's look at our routers. So we have routers, services, and middlewares. If you remember from the first chapter where I explained the background about Traefik. So the router is basically where the traffic enters into Traefik. I know that's a bit too much traffic in one sentence, but that's just how it goes. So the first thing we have up here is the path prefix API at internal, and that's for the dashboard itself. So that's the internal Traefik provider. These two are the two Traefik providers handling the API and the dashboard. Then down here, you can actually see the Who Am I service. So we have the Who Am I Docker localhost and the service that's running in the backend. So if we click on here, you actually can see more about the service. The entry point, as we mentioned, is port 80. Then the router is actually Who Am I at Docker. And if you hover over it, you can see it a bit more. And then what service is it mapped to? And we can also see the status of the service's success. That means we have a healthy connection between Traefik and the service, as well as we can see the name, the entry point, and we just see a little bit more information. Now, as we get further along, we can actually enable TLS and different middlewares here as well. For example, if we want to do rate limiting, or if we want to add some different type of features, you would see it actually in this user interface portion of the service. And if we go into the service again, we can see we can access Who Am I again here. It's a load balancer. There's one server running, and it's a Docker provider. If I click here, it takes us back to a slightly different screen. And now you can see the service details and the load balancer, and it tells you it's a Docker provider, status is success, and how we're handling the header that's coming from the entry point, and we're just going to pass the header directly to the container. Then here you can see the servers, and this is actually the container IP address and what port it's actually publishing on. So Traefik is actually watching the containers that start here, and if we start more services, so let's do that quickly. We can actually go scale, right? And we're going to scale it to 3 again. And we should come back over here, and in a moment we should see it refresh. Maybe if I come back, there we go. If I refresh, there we go. We can now see we have 3 services running, 3 containers. So 5, 2, and 8, and it does refresh automatically. It just goes faster if you refresh it. that way. So now we can see right away what's going on with our traffic service. And if I click around here, you can see I still have the same amount of router details. So the router didn't change. It's just the service itself now has 3. If we click in here, you can see we had the 3, and down here, the routes takes you back to the original screen that I showed you before. The middlewares, we have middlewares running, but this is, like I said, for the internal configuration of Traefik itself, so not for our service. If we head back to our service again, so who am I? Click here, and we see the 3 containers running. Let's go ahead and scale that back down to 1. And we should just wait a second, and it should update again with the new feature, or I can just refresh and it should just, there we go. So if you refresh, it grabs it quicker because it queries it right away. If not, it's like a timeout, or it's like a refresh period and it waits a certain amount of time and then it queries again. So there you go. That is the dashboard, and we're going to use this more and more as we start adding more services and middlewares. But it's kind of nice to see because you get a general health of what's going on in your Traefik server. You can see right away if you have routers with issues, warnings or errors, same for services. And this is where you get like healthy status, and you can start pulling this information into your monitoring or alerting systems and get information what's going on, like the health of your Traefik server as well as the services that connected. So the Traefik dashboard is extremely helpful for troubleshooting, as well as just having a visual representation of what's actually connected to your Traefik installation. I use it quite often because sometimes you have a lot of services running and you look at it, you want to make sure that everything is connected properly, the configurations are in line. So the dashboard comes in really handy, and we're going to use it in, like I said, in future sections, and learn how also to secure it, because you see right here it's not secure. And it's there's no password or anything at the moment. And that's kind of a liability because we don't want to publish this publicly and have the whole world see our dashboard. So we'll learn in future chapters exactly how we can lock it down and make sure it's only for us internally to view the dashboard. Also, we can add HTTPS to this as well. So join me in the next section as we recap the Traefik getting started section and understand exactly where we went from deploying a WhoAmI service, deploying Traefik, to understanding the dashboard, scaling, and we're going to get into configuration in the next chapters.